I don't think so. I'm just trying to hear what's rubbing.
Yeah, no, it's only.
Greetings viewers, it's another night out here during the week. In the last video I showed that the upper radiator hose for a factory KA and a S14 can work if you trim this end. The lower radiator hose is similar. You have to trim this end a little bit, I don't know, I think probably 2 inches off the end here. And then over here I actually used, that's better. So over here I actually used one of those nylon radiator hose repair kits. You can get them at, I don't know, Advance, O'Reilly, AutoZone, Napa. They're like $3-4. They look like this. They have 3 different size nylon connectors and some really cheapy hose clamps in there and some little rubber cement. You can actually use those to kind of make a compound bend here. So this is an 1.5 inch elbow that I cut off of a different radiator hose, probably from the Oldsmobile. I put one of those connectors in and it allowed me to kind of turn the way that this elbow sneaks around. So now you might be able to see down in here, the lower radiator hose comes out between the intercooler and the body, wraps around over top of the blow-off valve and through this space underneath the intercooler pipe right here, and then hits the water pump. The upper radiator hose is completely unobstructed. But with that, I mean, I know it is kind of a tangle of hoses over here, but you know, I have very limited space to work with, and this is kind of the best I can do for now. So it looks pretty good to me. Everything still has clearance, and the pipe that I had welded for me is going to work. We might have a little bit of an issue with our intake air temp sensor. I'll have to screw that in and see how close it is. Here is the GM air intake sensor, or sorry, intake air temp sensors right here. And it looks like we actually are going to have a good amount of clearance to the radiator hose. That's not even all the way screwed in. I just got that started. So yeah, looks like that's going to be okay. This nipple right here is for the tube that goes back to the idle air control. Up front here, it looks like, other than the fact that the turbo is not slipped into this coupler right here, the whole thing, plumbing wise up front, is taken care of. Intercooler's plumbed, the radiator's plumbed, everything looks like it's going to work. And other than maybe this thermostat housing here, I think that's the only thing that we might have an interference issue with, that belt down there. But we'll find that out once we get this thing running. Back at the goodie table here, in addition to everything that's in this box, which I will cover a little bit later, I have some other goodies. There's some other parts that came in. You guys saw this in the last video. This is an AEM X Series wideband with the sensor right here. So that is going to be installed right before we start everything up. I have the oil pressure gauge that I showed you guys in the last video with the nylon line. That's going to get thrown in the trash. Here is the copper line replacement for that. So this is a package that I'm pretty excited about. A new dust cap for front passenger hub assembly. Yeah, I don't know where that one went, so it's about time that I ordered one of these. Excited to have that. But here is the coolest part that I was able to pick up from Z-Car Depot. So this is a speedometer pinion assembly. I'll show you. Oh no, this is just ridiculous. I don't want to cut the plastic, I'll damage it, I bet you. Here is the mechanical distributor drive. Technically this is for, I think it's a 280ZX. It has the proper gear on the end with 19 teeth that is supposed to meet up or match up with the 390-to-1 diff that is in the Datsun from the factory. As long as that's a factory wagon rear end, this should work perfectly. But the magic is, that is the mechanical speedometer drive. This housing and this O-ring and everything directly replace the speed sensor on the transmission. I'll throw the car up in the air and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. But this piece right here allows me to adapt my factory Datsun cable-driven speedometer to this KA24DET 5-speed. This is genius. I can't take credit for this. I think I saw this on either KAT.org or Nico Club or one of the numerous forums out there. But this is a well-documented trick to get your mechanical speedo to run off of your 5-speed. Look at this. Another package from my friend Ryan Hicks out there in Ohio. Man, tell you what, that guy has been a real godsend for this build. He parts out these cars all the time. He's built several of them. He's building a really, really nice one on his channel. You should check that out. But Ryan Hicks came in clutch for me. This here, come on out of there now. Okay, check it out. This is a used but nice hood latch release mechanism. That's right. This is the left-hand drive version. So if any of you have tried to order these from Z-Car Depot, right now they only have the right-hand drive ones, so they don't bolt up. You have to retrofit all the linkage and all that stuff to the left-hand drive bracket. But this is the critter that I need to actually use the hood latch on the Datsun. But I do need to be able to open the hood quickly in the event that, I don't know, anything goes wrong. I mean, I'm not foreseeing literally any issue at all. This thing is going to start and run drive perfectly. We shouldn't even have to open the hood. But in case we do, it's going to be easier and we can pop it from inside the car. Thanks a lot, Ryan. I really appreciate it. If you guys haven't checked out Hicks Fab Garage on YouTube, check him out. He's doing a lot of really cool stuff. There's that new dust cap. She's a little stubborn going on there. I think the bore in there maybe got a little mushroomed out. Anyway, that's really satisfying for me, probably not so much for you guys. So right here, this is the speed sensor that with that single 10mm bolt, pop this off and that new speedometer drive pinion will go in its place. Here is the Datsun 510 speedometer cable, came right from the dash. It just looped over the transmission and then it hooks up right there. So I'm gonna pull the speed sensor off really quick and then see if I can't get that speedo gear in there. Of course, can't get that with a socket. Why would you be able to? I have to bring out my single most valuable wrench and risk losing it. Oh, there it goes. I thought for sure I was going to be vice gripping this. Nothing against vice grips, they work. I've been thinking about renaming my garage to oil leak garage. So it seems like that's all anything ever does around here dependably is leak oil. Here's the speed sensor with a red, can't remember what gear ratio the red gear is for, but I looked it up and according to my Datsun here, it should be this 19 tooth is what I should have for a 390 gear. So if you look closely at these, the bodies of these are the same size and the O-ring is the same size. So this will fit right back in place where it was. I'm gonna see if I can install it with this flat side down so that it can be held in with that same bolt. If not, I'll have to file a flat just like that on the opposite side. All right, I can confirm that this 280ZX speedometer pinion will slip right in and you can actually install it upside down so that you have access to that little tab right there. So what I'm gonna do is using the original bolt, I think I'll just make a little tab out of aluminum or something. I wonder if even like a large washer would work. Let me try that. All right, hate it if you want to, but there you go. So for now, I just have a large washer that overhangs that groove or that slot in the pinion gear to where the pinion can no longer come out. It's nice and secure. And now we can thread on our speedometer cable. There's that. And there you are, folks. That is a KA24DET transmission hooked up to a Datsun speedometer. That's right, pretty neat trick. Hopefully it works. I will come back and probably make a better tab for this that fits a little bit further in there. But for now, the speedometer gear cannot come out and the speedometer cable's hooked up. Next time you see me, it'll be the weekend and we'll be ready to wire this thing. Also, forgot to mention, the wheels and tires, hopefully they'll be done soon. I can get those put back on here and actually roll this thing outside, see what it's gonna look like sitting at ride height with the rolled fenders. Also the drive shaft. I talked to the drive shaft shop, they are gonna make me one. He had to order a new yoke, a transmission yoke, because the one I had was trash. He's gonna shorten it, balance it, put the new yoke on there and new U-joints front and rear, and that sucker should be ready to bolt in. Welcome back, it's a new day. We finally got a whole bunch of really important stuff in. Drive shaft is on the ground, new tires are mounted, and my friend Andrew is here. He's got a ton of stuff to help wire this thing, so we're gonna see how far we can get today. Here is the factory Datsun 510 wagon drive shaft that I had shortened, and I did check it. The length is perfect, so we're gonna throw this in the car real quick, right up in there, and then we're gonna get the wheels and tires mounted, push this thing outside. I'll just let this roll and get in it. See, we might be throwing some stuff in. Oh, it's very awesome. All right, well now we can review the video. I don't know, I really think those tires are gonna do it.
Yeah. I can see this not being concrete here with the there.
It was a huge problem.
What out there?
What's that?
Oh, maybe it's just because of concrete.
Scrubbing. Yeah, scrubbing the floor. There you go. Ha-ha! Nice. Had to get the car outside, take a couple pictures of it. Andrew and I really wanted to test it with both of us in there. It looks like at this ride height, with these tires, rolled fenders, we do have just a little bit more. There's a pinch weld inside the front fender here where the body comes together under the A-pillar. I'm gonna fold that in with a hammer. Then we should have full lock-to-lock steering, no rubbing anywhere. With both of us in there, this thing does not touch anywhere. We tried to jump up and down as much as we could. So I think it's gonna work. I think this is gonna clear. But without further ado, we are gonna get into wiring this thing. I'll go over what I have first in parts and kind of our plan of where we're gonna lay stuff out, how it's gonna work. And then we'll try to quickly, but also concisely go through each piece that we're gonna wire, how we're gonna do that, but I'm trying not to bore you with too many details. So here's what I got for wiring and putting an ECU in this thing. First thing I did was from Wiring Specialties, I ordered pretty much every connector that I thought I might need that I could not get from the two spare harnesses that I have. So here's a distributor connector. Here is an alternator connector. I believe this is a start signal connector for the starter. And then I think this is a coolant temp sensor connector or maybe an IAC or something like that. So I tried to order all the connectors I might need because I'm gonna make my own harness. Probably the most important chunk is what's in this box right here. So this stuff all came from DIY Auto Tune. So I guess I'll just tell you right away. What I'm going with is a Microsquirt setup. The reason being the cost, the tunability, and the size, so packaging, and just, I guess, yeah, just trying not to spend, you know, $1,500 on a Haltech or something like that. I know those are great ECUs. I know that they have a lot of capability, but I could not find a good engine wiring harness for this car. The two that came with this car were damaged and they had been cut and taped back together a bunch of times, so I can't really depend on a lot of those connections. So instead of spending $600 on a swap harness from Wiring Specialties and then $1,500 to $1,000 or whatever, somewhere in there for an ECU, I figured this way, if I bought a Microsquirt, I'd have enough stuff where I could just buy a couple connectors, a couple sensors, and wire it myself. Anyway, I'll get off that soapbox. So here are the connectors from Wiring Specialties. This is the kit right here. This is a Microsquirt computer with an 8-foot harness. I went with an 8-foot harness because it should allow me to run the wires to all the sensors really nice and clean, and we should be able to mount this Microsquirt anywhere. Additionally, I got their, I believe this is the interface cable. So this is what allows your computer to hook up serially to the Microsquirt to be able to program it. Okay, yep, so you can probably see here, there's the jack. It's kind of interesting. This is a 9-pin D-sub connector that goes to like almost like a headphone jack right there for programming. So this is the Microsquirt ECU right here. Very, very, very simple, very compact. You can use these. I've seen guys run LSs off of them. I've seen guys run turbo LS motors off of these. So with a couple of changes and some clever wiring, you can run a V8. In our case, we're gonna run the KA in that car. We're gonna run it on wasted spark and batch fire for fuel injectors. So I'll explain that when we get a little bit further on, but that's a better look at the ECU itself. Okay, last two things. So in a previous episode, I just mocked up the intake air temperature sensor. So the IAT that you get from DIY AutoTune, it's a GM IAT sensor. They also sell the pigtail right here. So instead of buying that from Wiring Specialties, I bought that from DIY AutoTune, just so that I have the sensor and the cable, or in the connector, all from the same company. I have decided with the Microsquirt setup to run a speed density setup, which means I need a MAP sensor, manifold absolute pressure. A really popular option for that is the GM 3-bar MAP sensor right here. They put these in a ton of different cars. These are really, really reliable. DIY AutoTune sells these. Anyway, so that's the MAP sensor I went with. We're gonna have to rig up a bracket for this to mount it somewhere. And the last thing, I know you guys love show and tell. Okay, this is very, very delicate, holy cow. I don't know how well you'll be able to see, but this right here is the DIY AutoTune's SR20/KA24DE high resolution trigger wheel for the distributor. We're gonna show you how this installs. Obviously there's laser etching that says this side up, so you would think even an idiot could install it like me. This right here is gonna give the cam signal a much higher resolution as to the position of the cam sensor or cam shaft, so it will allow the computer to more accurately trigger ignition. This is really important when you're going to a coil on plug setup, which is what I'm going on to. I'll explain that when we get over to the car. But this is a really important piece. All right, viewers, I think we have a plan. So Andrew, who's trying not to be on camera, but he will be a whole bunch when we go to Power Tour. Look who else is here. S Motorsports, that's right. Yeah, he's my neighbor. It's pretty sweet. I have a famous YouTuber for a neighbor. So we have a plan of how we're gonna route this, and I think it's actually gonna turn out pretty sweet. I'll show you what we got. For those that don't know, I work in automation and electrical for a profession, so I kind of nerd out about this stuff. Andrew over there is a master electrician by trade. He's also a coworker of mine. For those of you that know that, right? Everybody clap your hands and whatever, right? Anyway, we get kind of nerdy when it comes to wiring and making it really clean and nice. So here's kind of how we're gonna lay this out. The Microsquirt ECU, because it is so small, we are going to tie it in to the back of the strut tower right here. We're gonna run the wiring above the wiper motor, underneath the cowl panel there, behind the hood assist spring, and then it's gonna tie into anything in the car over here at the fuse block. If we need to, we'll split off, and we're gonna pick up all the injectors here in the middle, as well as the coil packs here. And I'll explain these in more depth when we get to that point. So at this point, all we've done is we put all of the salvage connectors and the new connectors on every sensor that we're gonna need, including the IAT over here. So now we're going to split the loom on the Microsquirt and start laying wires out. I think we might actually fix it to the strut tower as well, so nothing moves around. And we've got a whole bunch of fancy loom over there, and a whole bunch of relays and fuses we're gonna shove in here. So once we get to laying some wires out, then we'll kind of show you guys our scheme for power and fusing. As you guys probably saw, Andrew diligently working over here, and me not in cam or in frame doing any work. It's because I was over here researching to make sure that I know exactly how to hook all this stuff up. So where do we want to start this?
Maybe just how we decide to lay out the wiring.
Okay, yep, that's a good idea. So I'm not sure if I covered this yet. We've decided the battery is going to go somewhere over here. We don't know exactly what size battery we're going to go with yet. It has to be fairly small. We know that. So anyway, what's going to happen is we're using the original fuse box back here. We're adding a couple of relays, which are down here, and we'll explain what those are in detail later. A couple of the wires that need to come down to sensors and stuff in the middle of the engine, we split those out of the main wire harness right here. Right? We're going to use this nice braided loom to keep all of the injector wiring connected, or covered up nicely. And then over here with the coil wiring, we're actually planning on running all of these off the side of the valve cover and back, and then it's going to meet up here with the main loom. So let's see, let me cover a couple of parts. These ignition coils are from a 2000 or 2001, I think it's a 2000 Nissan Maxima. The nice thing about this is the rubber grommets on these, they actually fit tight into the spark plug hole in the KA. So you push these all the way down, it makes a nice tight seal, and you actually don't really need a bolt to hold them down. The trick to these is that these are the front bank coils of a Nissan Maxima with a VG30. The rear bank has the connector pointing straight up and down like this, so you can't use them. So you need 2 donor cars, or in my case, 1 donor car and an extra from Rock Auto. So for those of you who are looking to use Maxima coils, here is how the wiring lays out. Okay, from the bottom, your bottom pin is plus 12 volts switched. Top or middle pin is ground, and top pin is the ignition trigger. So for us guys looking for junkyard parts here, this is what the wiring will look like. Bottom pin is 12 volts, middle pin is ground, and the wire that looks funky, right, this is gray and red on this one, that's your ignition trigger, and that's a 5-volt trigger. So what we're doing here is we're running wasted spark, which means that we're using 2 outputs from the Microsquirt, and with 1 spark output, it's going to fire coils 1 and 4 at the same time, and then with the other spark output, it's going to fire coils 2 and 3. It's going to fire each coil twice as often as it normally does. So this coil is going to fire once on the power stroke for compression, or for cylinder 1. It's going to also fire on the exhaust stroke. What that's called is wasted spark. It will not affect the way that the engine runs. It just simplifies the wiring and the control. The other thing we're doing is what's called batch fire. Similar type of thing, firing 2 injectors at one time and 2 injectors at another time. And what that's going to do, I know some people are going to say, oh well, you're going to burn some extra, lose some extra fuel, because the fuel injector is actually going to fire when the intake valve is closed. So there's be a little bit of fuel that pools on the back side of the valve. But it really won't affect the way that the engine runs. A lot of guys do this on LS, all sorts of other swaps. Anyway, so batch fire and wasted spark. So we're using 2 ignition outputs and 2 fuel injector outputs. These fuel injectors are LS truck. So the pink wires here are plus 12 volts all the time. And then the other wires are actually the fire, or the ground, or the injector. So the main sensors for the engine, I just sorted this out for the distributor, and we'll go through that in just a sec. It's a separate thing. Here is our coolant temp sensor. There are, I'd have to figure out which one of these is positive and ground, but there is a wire in the Microsquirt loom for the coolant temp sensor. There's also wires in the Microsquirt loom here for throttle position sensor. And those wires we decided to pull from the main harness, and we're going to run them right down the middle. This is VR2, so this is the input that is going to come from the cam sensor that's inside the S14 distributor. We're going to delete the cap and the rotor and everything inside there. We're just going to put a 3D printed cap on this because we're going wasted spark based off of the cam signal. This is our IAT. There are 2 wires out of the Microsquirt harness that connect up to this. Just got back from Charlie's. Thank you again, Charlie's. God dang, those are good burgers. Anyway, we're gonna put you guys back on time lapse. I don't want to sit here and talk through every single step of this. I think it'll put everybody to sleep. We're still in the process of sorting out how we want to route all the wires and how we want to connect everything. So we're going to do all of that, or as much as we possibly can tonight. So enjoy the time lapse. Watch us get a whole bunch of stuff done, and we'll circle back when we're done. Viewers, we got updates. You've probably watched a bunch of the time lapse that was going for several hours, and we have absolutely cranked on this thing. I will say we probably have 5 or 6 wires left to land, and then we do have to do like the power side, switch 12 volt, stuff like that. We got maybe like probably 10 total wires left to hook up for the engine, but we're also tying into the factory fuse box for all the circuits inside the car. So there is a little bit of extra work, but just to give you guys a quick view, here is the main harness, runs along the firewall, comes over the ECU here. Then there's one drop that comes off of this side, runs basically almost right over top of that oil line. We are going to separate those so that there is not anything touching. Come down to the distributor over here. There's another line that comes down here, hits all the injectors. And then there's a third line that comes and goes underneath the intake manifold and pops up right here. And that, other than this wiring here, which I may abandon because I can get the connector right to the IAC back there, this splits off to intake air temperature over here, throttle position sensor, and coolant temp. So something interesting about the throttle position sensor, I was trying to determine what wires we needed to hook up to, and I was testing it with a multimeter, and I ended up taking the throttle body out, took the TPS off, and I found this one to be junk. So I'm gonna order a brand new one. They're ridiculously expensive, but we do need a new TPS. I'll get it on the way, and then all we gotta do is swap it out. The wiring is already done. Coolant temp sensor's done. The distributor is almost done. I think I have to hook up the 5 volt reference and maybe one other thing. The rest of the wiring here, I'm just gonna clean a lot of this up. This is all headlight wiring, and I think this is washer fluid wiring, whatever. It is gonna be hell of a challenge to get a battery in this thing. We have decided the battery is gonna go here. For no other reason than it's hot over there, it's not as hot over here. That's it. For today, we're gonna call it quits. I'll be back at it tomorrow, finishing up fuel pump wiring, power side, other things like that. So catch you then. All right, and we're back. That's another couple days have passed. If you guys can see in the background, the shop is just steadily getting worse, dirtier and dirtier. So the new throttle position sensor came in today, and before I do anything else, I'm gonna test it right out of the box. Well, I'm glad I checked this. Brand new, right out of the box, junk, piece of shit. Yeah, tested this on the same terminals that I did on the old one here, and the old one at least changes resistance a little bit. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Doesn't change. It's like 5 mega ohms, which is essentially open. So this thing is junk. Really good thing to do to check the stuff that you get if it's not a mechanical or a hard part. If it's a sensor like this, if there's any way that you can verify that it's good before you put it in, it'll save you a lot of hassle. I know buying stuff on Rock Auto is a pain in the ass, but at least you can get it refunded or get a new one. All right, everybody, welcome back. Guess what? I managed to lure Andrew back to help me again. His help has been absolutely paramount in this wiring project. So we'll go over this. I've said this 3 or 4 times now. We'll go over this in more detail if you guys want. I can do that at a later time. But right now, we're gonna continue to jam on this car. We are coming very, very, very close. We have most of our power wiring hooked up. All the sensors are wired. The ECU is mounted, as well as the relays. So while he's finishing up splicing into just a few more wires, I think I might do some cleanup of the old wiring that we're not gonna use. All right, so in here, I don't know if you guys can see, there's the dome light, and there is a wire right there that is definitely switched 12 volts. There's a ground, and they're just hanging out there in free space. So there's a whole lot of stuff like that that has to be taped up or heat shrunk over, just so that we don't burn this thing to the ground. Under here, so this is the serial communication cable from the laptop to the Microsquirt. This purple wire I think is the bootload wire. So I think you need this wire, you need to touch this to 12 volts to be able to put firmware in the Microsquirt. And then this green wire here is a tachometer output. I don't have a tach yet, but that is the wire right there that'll give us our 12 volt pulsed. So on the floor over there on the passenger side, there's all the extra wiring from the Microsquirt as well as the wiring for the wideband gauge. We're gonna finish making this all look pretty. It looks crazy right now. There's wires all over the place. Gonna clean it up, finish wiring, a couple connections we have left, and then we'll pick up later. Viewers, holy shit. This is an arduous task. This is ambitious. If you are not strong in wiring, or if you don't have a friend who's a master electrician who's also getting into cars, I don't suggest taking this route. However, most of the other options are more expensive. So if you're cheap and you're willing to put in some work, this is a really cool way to do this. I'm gonna give you guys a quick overview of the engine bay. In the comments, if you want a very detailed explanation of how everything was hooked up and wired, let me know. I will do another video going over just that. This is the final product. Microsquirt wired up to the KA. Obviously the radiator fans are held in temporarily just so that we could route the wires. Here's the positive and negative, comes right out the middle, splits to two fans. DPS down here. This is all of the LS injector wiring. Over here, these are the Nissan Maxima coil packs. You can probably see the DIY Auto-Tune trigger disc. So that's so that we can run these coils in wasted spark. No more spark plug wires. And then my good friend Jeremiah at work is actually printing me a custom delete cap for this distributor because we don't need the spark plug towers anymore. And this is the add-on fuse block that I had to add for the circuits pertaining to the EFI and the Microsquirt. Okay, that is gonna be it. We have cranked on this thing for days and days and days. I owe a huge debt of gratitude to Andrew. He'll be with us on the power tour trip. So we are trying really hard. We're jamming to try to get this car on the road, and we are so much closer now, it's ridiculous. We have a giant list over here. I won't bore you with the details on that just yet, but we do have a huge list of stuff to do right there. We'll see what we can cross off. If you've watched this far in the video, thank you so much. All of my subscribers out there, really appreciate the support. We're at like 712 right now. I hope to see some of you at local meets, or if any of you are gonna be on power tour, we are gonna be there, whether it's in the Datsun or in the Oldsmobile. So once again, thank you so much for watching. We will see you in the next one.